Hello humans, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, we shape Opal's gemstones using a dremel. If that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing. Today we're going to be working on 4 Ethiopian opals, the first of which is this beautiful amber colored pinfire opal. And then we have opal number 2, which has a really nice wavy pattern. There's some really good reds and yellows in there, good greens. Should be a pretty bright stone if we get something out of it. And then we have opal number 3. It is very crystal. It has some good teals going on, and I really think that this one has a lot of promise to it because it really, you can see how clean it is inside it. And then we have opal number 4, which is small, but just because it's small doesn't mean it's not super bright. And you can see just how brilliant that flashes from the side. I hope we're able to capture that. When we weigh them out, the opal number 1 is 6 carats. Opal number 2 starts as 6.05 carats. Opal number 3 starts as 5.71 carats. And opal number 4 is 2.46 carats. When we shine a flashlight through opal number 1, you can see that there is a lot of issues with the dirt going through it, and it's probably going to be a pretty tricky cut, but it is beautiful. And then with opal number 2, you can see that it's mostly clean, but there's that dirt that comes in through the side, which will be tricky. And then with opal number 3, super clean in there. Dirt looks pretty surface level, should be pretty straightforward cut. And opal number 4 as well, super clean, just a little bit of dirt on that one side. Also should be pretty straightforward, hopefully none of them crack, but if you want to see how these stones are shaped and polished and turned into gems, keep on watching. Hey guys, Carlin here. Hope your week is going really well. I want to go over a little bit of a game plan for the Ethiopian opals I'll be shaping in this video today. So, there are 4 of them, as you guys have seen previously. You can see here that they are all still in the rough. Starting out with opal number 1, we have our honey opal, and as you can see, there's a lot of great color in there. It's very pinfire-y, especially right here. You can really see that pattern coming out to play. It has kind of a weird shape to it. As you can see, it's not super consistent, but it should yield a pretty alright stone. So for this one, I'm gonna try to go for an oval like I usually would. I think actually all of these, if I can, I'm gonna try to go for an oval. So we will see how that goes. But yeah, this one I'm most excited about because it's just got this beautiful body tone. It's got that amazing pinfire pattern. It's a pretty special one, and I've been sitting on it for a while, waiting for the right moment. A few of these I've been sitting on waiting for the right moment to cut them, and today is their day. Going in with opal number 2 is this opal here, and you guys can see it has just as good of color, if not better color, than the honey one. It's got this little divot in here where the dirt runs into it, but I still think that I could get a good oval out of it. My prediction on this one is that it's going to be wavy pattern when it's finished, but we'll see. You never know when the patterns switch up on you. And sometimes when you look at the opal from the side, the color just totally surprises you when it comes up through the face. So that is opal number 2. Opal number 3 is this beautiful crystal opal here. It has some really good teals. It's very crystal, very clean. Doesn't have a whole lot going for it other than that teal. I do think that this one is probably the least bright of the bunch. But, you know, sometimes those least bright ones, they come out nice and mighty, because you never know what's laying right underneath this dirt. So that should be fun. This one I think will be a pretty easy cut unless it cracks. It seems pretty straightforward. You know, this side gives you a nice high part, to create a dome, but we can't make the dome any higher than this side already is. And we'll have to bring it in, and there is some dirt inside of it. So it'll be a good cut, it'll be fun. And this one is one of my first opals that I ever got. I think it was in my second ever parcel of opal. And you guys can see it has really banging colors going on, from that orange, red, kind of yellow band right next to that green band is really interesting. It's got dirt all around it, but it keeps my hopes high. It's very crystal inside there, I can see that. And I'm hoping that when I finish cutting it, that it has like a broad pattern, but there's also the possibility of it having like bands of color running through it, which I think would also be pretty cool. And again, yeah, we'll see what pattern this ends up having. It could totally shock us with the pattern. I'm hoping for a success with all four, but with Ethiopian opal, you never know when in the drying process if it's gonna like crack or not. So I'm gonna keep you guys posted throughout the drying process, filming every step of the way. The tools I will be using today are this diamond sintered bit from Suva Lapidary 110 grit, and then I'll be using my Nova points, also from Suva Lapidary. I'll be using my felt tips and lapidary paste from Kent's Supply on Etsy. And to protect my eyes and lungs, I will be wearing a dust mask with the pink pods on it, and a pair of safety goggles to keep it all nice and safe. So starting out on opal number 1, I tried to expose both sides of the color bar to decide which side would be a better fit for the face, and looking at it at this point, I can't really see like a huge difference. So I took my time looking at it and decided on a certain side of it and just went with it. And then when I was taking in the sides, I realized that this isn't going to make a good rhombus, this isn't going to make a good oval, and so I just cut like a big piece off of it and made it into a teardrop, and I felt like this was a pretty good shape. At this point, it had been really absorbing water, so it was really hard to tell which side would be brighter, but I could tell which side I had chosen. So this is what it looks like at this point, and it's 1.32 carats. Moving on to opal number 2, I did the same thing, exposing the color to see which side would be better, and this one had that divot of dirt that went into the side of it. So once I had kind of taken off the dirt from the front and the back just a bit, enough to see the color bar, I really started going in to bring down that side that was dirty and shaping it into an oval shape. So we ended up with a bit of a longer oval shape because that dirt did reach in a little bit further than I thought that it would, but this is the shape that we ended up with. It's still pretty nice, and it is 1.63 carats at this point. For opal number 3, I really just took in the top part and ground off all the dirt from the bottom part, tried to get as much dirt off as I could, and then I started bringing in the sides to make it a circular shape. I was thinking oval, but once I started working on it, I realized it would be much better to be more of a circle, and the shape we ended up with was pretty alright. Kind of a low dome, but I'm still happy with it, and it is 1.36 carats at this point. And then we have opal number 4, which is the smallest of the bunch. I started by taking down that black kind of potch that was making a little hat on the top of it, and then I took down the dirt to see the color bar, and it had mostly absorbed the water by the time I got to look at the color bar, but I could still kind of see that one side had like some good red, so I went for it, and it was the better side to be shaped to be a dome. This is the shape we ended up with, very similar to opal number 2, and it is 1.09 9 carats. So now moving on to the Nova points, it is important with Ethiopian Opal to be really careful on these black and brown Nova points. While I do talk about doing the shaping on them with other stones, with Ethiopian Opal, since Ethiopian Opal is so crazy soft, you can really easily make a dent in this stone if you hold it in the spot for too long. So you really gotta just keep moving, and since it's so soft, the Nova points do polish it a bit faster than if you're working on Australian Opal, and a lot faster. It goes a lot faster than if you're working on something like Sunstone or Moonstone. So that's something to keep in mind, is that it does take it down really fast, and it's super soft. After working on all these other stones and then going back to Ethiopian Opal, this experience like really solidified for me how crazy soft Ethiopian Opal is and how quickly it can go wrong. And when I sliced through the honey opal with my like round cutting bit that I have, it just went like, it took me maybe 3 to 5 seconds to cut through the entirety of the opal, and it just kind of blew my mind, especially after slicing up so many sunstones recently. So you really want to be careful, and you're not going to see any of that color until it's dried out. And so when I was working on these, I was thinking that I would be able to get the stones to dry out within like 3 days, but it took more like 5 days for them to dry out. And when you're drying your stones, most people will put your Ethiopian Opal in a little Ziploc baggie and then let it hang out for months, but I don't do that because I don't have that kind of patience. I've done it before, and I just, at a certain point, I'm like, come on, I want this thing to be dry already. So I kind of just let my opal sit out, and if it cracks, then it wasn't going to be that stable to begin with. So yeah, I just let them air dry, and you guys will see that later in. It's not the safest method. I have had a couple crack here and there, but man, if you're impatient, it's the only way to go. I mean, I really do, though, like to watch the color come back to the stone in Ethiopian Opal. It's really interesting to me how different the pattern can look in the rough piece versus the finished piece, and as you're letting it dry out, you kind of forget a little bit what you're expecting, and it's always a little bit of a surprise, and that makes it really fun for me to work with Ethiopian. Also, it's cheaper. But as you are working through your Nova points, it's really important to make sure that you get all the sides of the stone, that you're working in a circular motion, and that you keep the stone moving constantly. Also, in between the grits of the Nova points, you're going to want to take a second and dry it off a little bit on like your pants or on a cloth that you have nearby to check for scratches. This also goes for your polishing paste or cerium oxide, whichever you are comfortable with. And it's just really important to check for scratches so that you don't have to go back and work through all the grits again. So this is opal number 1. It's still full of water, but you can see there's still play of color there. And when it's full of water, it is 1.13 carats. This is opal number 2. You can see this one really barely has any color. There's a little bit of green. And it is at 1.41 carats. And then this is opal number 3. Again, really lost its color on that one. And it weighs at this point 1.09 carats. And then we have opal number 4, same story, pretty darn crystal at this point, looks like glass, but it's slightly darker than the others, and it is at 0.91. You guys can see here the difference in the body tones between them and how opal number 4 is ever so slightly darker. This is them when they're in their white stage, and this is them when they're dried out. And you can see how much of the color of the body tone came back in all of them. The flash came back, and they're looking pretty good at this point, but they still need to be polished. So I like to let my Ethiopian opals dry out entirely before I polish them, because when you are working with the felt tips, they create heat and they create friction on the stone. And if you polish your stone when it's wet and it has too much of that friction going on, well, then it's going to make the water expel out of the stone rapidly. And the faster that the water leaves the Ethiopian opal, the more likely it is for it to crack. Now with opal number 1, you can still see a lot of the play of color in the stone, and that is a sign of a higher quality piece of Ethiopian opal. And that one actually was the one that took the longest for it to dry out. And to me, that's a good sign. That's a sign of stability. That's a sign of when the customer buys the stone, that if they get it wet for some reason, they could still see the flash and that it's probably going to do well. Whereas if a stone dries out really fast when you leave it out, that, you know, it means that when it gets wet again, it's going to dry out fast again, and then that's not very good. That can lead to cracking and crazing and stuff. Also, the texture on the face of the stone being smoother is really important, because the rougher that the skin of the stone is, the faster the water is going to expel. So that's why it's really important to go and polish it through the pink nova point before you let it start drying out. Now, if you use something like cerium oxide, which is something that I have seen many people do with Ethiopian opal, you don't have to deal with as much of an issue of it heating up, but you are still working with felt, so it still will probably heat up quite a bit. But I see people who work with cerium oxide, sometimes they will have a bowl of the cerium water mixture, and they'll dunk the opal in it and then work on it with the dremel. Or if you have like a felt wheel, they'll have like a paintbrush coated in this mixture, and they'll rub it on the felt wheel. So the problem that I have with the thought of having a bowl of the water cerium mixture and holding the opal underneath it is that the stone's gonna absorb a certain amount of that water, and while it might not make it go milky or something, you're probably gonna have to wait for it to dry out again. But I don't know. I don't work with cerium oxide. I stick to my comfort zone, which is these diamond lapidary paste. But, you know, there's many things to take into consideration when working with Ethiopian opal, more than other stones that don't absorb as much water. Now, all opal absorbs a certain amount of water, so regardless of what kind of opal you're working with, you really don't want it to get wet if you can help it. But Australian opal has got to be the most stable, I'm sure. I don't know very much about Brazilian opal, or American opal, or Indonesian opal, but I know that Australian opal is desired for a reason, and the reason why people don't desire Ethiopian as much is because it has these issues that you have to work through. It's really touchy, it's delicate, it's soft, and there's a lot of things and loops you need to jump through. Alright guys, and this is the final result for opal number 1. The final weight of the stone is 1.08 carats. It's got a really beautiful body tone. The flash is really nice, and you can catch it from every angle, which, you know, makes me happy. I love the pinfire. There's that little bit of chaff there. We ended up losing a total of 4.92 carats on that one. And the back is really brilliant. You know, I'm pretty happy with the size of it and finish. As far as opal number 2 goes, this is the finished product of that. You can see the rolling rainbow flash that it's got going on. The finished weight is 1.31 carats, which means we lost a total of 4.74 carats, which again is much more than half of the stone. I was able to save like very little of both of these last stones, and that's alright though. I really like the color, the shape turned out right, and opal number 3, this is what it looks like. It's got a nice broad flash, and it is about 1 carat even, which means that we lost a total of 4.71 carats in the shaping process, but it's nice, it's broad, it's got some good green, teal, blue flash. It's super crystal, like super crystal clear. And, you know, I can never be upset about a broad flash. Pretty happy with the way it turned out. Shape is really nice, and yeah, pretty pleased with that. And then we have opal number 4 with its full rainbow thing that it's got going on, and its finished weight is 0.83 carats, which means we lost a total of 1.63 carats in total, which is the highest yield of the 4 of them, and it's got a really bright flash going on. It's got full rainbow, and I feel like it's pretty true to its original rough shape as well. All things considered, pretty happy with the way these all turned out. So, my favorite is, of course, the really orange teardrop opal. I'm happy with the shape. I lost a lot of carats, and I feel like the side that ended up being the back is a little bit more flashy. Like, I feel like the side that ended up being the face has more of like a pinfire kind of pattern, whereas the back is a bit more flagstone-ish. But either way, I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. Sometimes it can be really hard to decide which side of an Ethiopian opal you're going to make the face, because it does that thing where it absorbs the water and then you can't see the play of color, and it's like, okay, well, you try to take the dirt off, and then you get the dirt off, and then it's like, oh, well, it's absorbed too much water, you can't really tell now. And that's kind of what happened with that one. So I'm not too disappointed. I think that it is still a huge win. I'm pleased, very pleased with that. And the shape, I feel like, is great. And yeah, that one is definitely my favorite, easily. My second favorite is opal number 2, which ended up being the largest opal. My favorite thing about that stone is, well, the way that the mossy kind of wavy pattern has a lot of colors. It's got full rainbow spectrum. It's got that great red-orange that kind of goes all the way across the face of it, and you even get purples and blues in there. So, I mean, I'm very satisfied with the play of color on that one. My one disappointment in it is that I couldn't save more of it. That dirt went in a little bit further than I thought that it would, and that led to a smaller stone, but that'll happen, and I'm happy that it was saved at all. It may not be the most desirable shape, but hey, you know, I was able to get something out of it, and that to me is a win, and it's very bright as well, because it could have not worked out at all. Some of these could have cracked during the drying process or the shaping process. I could have dropped them and never seen them again, and I definitely dropped these stones plenty of times, especially since I didn't dop. But my third favorite opal has got to be the super crystal one, opal number 4, which you know, started out as a really small piece, but I didn't lose very many carats of it. It turned out to be a huge success, and it has a full Roy G. Biv, full rainbow spectrum on it, and you can catch all of the rainbow at once on that one direction of it, and that's pretty awesome. And I'm happy with the shape and the size. It's less than a carat, but hey, you know, it was a big win. And my favorite part about that one is, of course, when you catch the angle with the full rainbow. I mean, forget about it, am I right? and the round crystal opal is still very beautiful. I'm super happy with the shape. It's very even. The dome is great. The only reason why it's not my third favorite is because though it is very broad and very bright, it doesn't have any of that red. It's mostly green-blue, which is, you know, it's alright. It's still a stunner, but, you know, I want more color. That's really the biggest reason. But, yeah, very happy with these results. They all pretty much worked out, and, you know, I think overall, pretty big win. Thank you guys so much for watching this far in the video. If you are still watching, I would appreciate it if you would like the video, let the algorithm know that this video is desirable, as well as subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. If you have anything to say, I'd love it if you would leave a comment down below. Share this with a friend if you have a friend to share this with. Just one friend makes all the difference. And I'll see you guys next time that I post a video. Later.